Welcome to Unit 7. So for this unit, we'll be focusing on the principles of design. So this unit will be a little bit of what we covered before and then expanding on it, and then also some new concepts. So just to review, the elements of design we have been working with are line, shape, value, color, and texture. The principles of design are more about the way these things are organized. Now, the principles of design are basically a framework that help creatives organize design elements such as line, shape, value, and color to give them further and expanded meaning. Sometimes the principles are considered rules, but as we know, for creatives, rules are sometimes meant to be broken. It's just about choosing when it's appropriate to do so. Now, there's some debate up in the world whether there are 7 or 13 or 5 principles. The principles that I wanted to share with you today are ones that I use often in my work and that are really awesome for communicating lots of meaning. Balance, emphasis, variety, movement, contrast, transformation, opposition, proportion, alignment, hierarchy, repetition, rhythm, and unity. Now, I don't want to spend all day talking about these. So if there is a principle that is listed on this list, feel free to go ahead and do some extra exploring, and it might be mandatory for your sketchbook assignment for you to explore some instances where these concepts and ideas appear in visual art. The first on the list was balance. So balance we talked about before, and it's a system of visual weight. So remember, if we think back to your selfie mood board, I was asking you to actually take a photo with asymmetrical negative space. So more negative space than your actual physical body in the picture frame. So balance is a system of visual weight. And this is the visual diagram from the sticker composition lecture. So feel free to jump back or pause and rewatch that lecture. Emphasis, also from our sticker composition lecture. It's a point of interest, an area of interest or importance or difference within a picture plane or a composition. And the example I gave you was focal point from Fortnite. Variety. We talked about variety before, but I wanted to show you another example. This is Wayne T-Ball, did a series of works, paintings called the Pie Counters. And with variety, there's lots of different ways you can have variety. So for example, in what we see a similarity of shape, but the variety happens in the different types of pies that are depicted. And the variety also happens with the different ways that color is organized within the picture plane. Movement. So with movement, I want you to think about a word called tracking. So tracking is the way that a viewer's eyes move through a piece. The movement can come in and go out. It can circle around a specific focal point. It can also be a line that leads us from one side to the other side, or top to bottom, or from one diagonal to the other side of the diagonal movement. Now, before I show you the next type of movement, I do want to stop and pause. For those of you who may have epilepsy or you have a tendency to develop migraines because of visual stimuli, you can just go ahead and fast forward and pass the next slide. But it's a different kind of movement, and it's called optic movement. And it happens when two colors or two hues or two values are very different, so different that they cause a vibration between the two. So I'll go ahead and pause before I'm going to show the next image. So optic movement. So the movement, there is actually no movement. These lines are not moving across the page, but is the vibration of the high contrast in proximity to each other that is leading the eye to actually optically create the movement. So we can go back to that idea of rods and cones and thinking about color burning out our cones, and as well as when colors are high contrast, they also affect how we perceive them. You can also have contrast and opposition, the next two. So with contrast and opposition, there are two elements that have a lot of difference between them. So here we see color difference. We can see color with light and dark, from saturated, pure hue to colors that are like a little bit more gray, like the very top box, we have a very muted red versus a very vibrant red orange right below it in the bottom top box there. So opposition or contrast of color. There can also be conceptual contrast, like we have here in this Mortal Kombat movie poster, where there is definitely contrast between blue and yellow, but there's also contrast between the concepts of ice and fire. Proportion. So proportion has to do with scale. When there is an image, there is a reasonable amount of sizes that are deemed as accurate, but you can use a difference in scale to emphasize ideas or qualities, like we have in this Monsanto poster that talks about genetically modified food, and it's making the connection between the scale of what should be smaller than the actual human to expanding it to be more than life size. Alignment. So alignment is when figures are following or arranged along a vertical, horizontal, or diagonal axis. So in this ad for the airline, these cups of coffees are lined up along the horizontal axis with narrative tableaus within each coffee cup. And then those tableaus are then also aligned along the horizontal plane. So you can actually get lots of tracking through a piece using alignment, going from corner to corner, and also get movement. Hierarchy. Hierarchy is one of my favorite tools of the principles. So hierarchy establishes dominance. There's one figure within the picture plane that is calling and asking for all of our intentions. So when we look at pictures, the pictures are always asking something of us, and it is to look at them, to see them. And how figures and objects are aligned or organized on a flat plane tells us all kinds of ideas and concepts about who we are, how we live, how we move through space. When using hierarchy, you can establish within the picture plane the most important thing you want the viewer to perceive. You can establish hierarchy with scale. You can also establish hierarchy with color and placement. So if you place an object in the center or at the top, it's going to ask the viewer to pay more attention to it. And it has to do with dominance, establishing dominance. And the example I have here is by Roy Lichtenstein, Girl with a Tear. Rhythm. Rhythm is also really exciting. So if you think about rhythm like a song has notes and keys and a pause, and then it also has repetition. So repetition is when you have repeated forms or elements within a picture plane. Now, this rhythm can be a regular rhythm like the image that I just showed you, or it can be an irregular rhythm like the one that you see here, where sometimes there's one chair and then there's two chairs and then there's one chair again, and it's an alternating rhythm. And then there's also a rhythm within a rhythm, because there's the rhythm of the dividers of the space, and then there's the rhythm of the stripes in the chair. So this is a really great example of multiple rhythms existing on the same picture plane. Now, rhythms can happen fast or slow, and that depends on how much space is between the elements. So if we look at these windows here, there's not a lot of space between the elements. So the rhythm is very fast, and it's most likely that the viewer will read this very quickly, versus when there's more space between the elements, where there's a rhythm, but you slow the pace down as the viewer is looking at the work. Unity. So I wanted to jump back and talk about Wayne Thiebaud with unity. So even though in the first one I showed you, there was a variety of different types of pie, here we have the same artist exploring the same subject matter, but with unity, the same type of pie depicted over and over and over again with the same colors and the same hues. Versus having more than one type. Now with this one, even though that there's more than one type of cake, there is a regularity in shape. They're all circles and spheres. Circles and spheres, or sphere-like, circle-like, all of them. So you can have unity or contrast or repetition. You can have it with line, you can have it with shape, you can have it with color, you can have it with value, you can have it with texture. So think about each one of these elements and organizing these elements based on these principles. Organizing line and shape based on the principle of unity. And here's another one by Wayne Thibault. And if you look at this entire body of work, you can even say that between all of this work, the unifying theme is food. So I don't want to skip over a really important concept that I'm not quite sure we landed on, and that is figure ground. So to understand figure ground, I want you to know that they are interdependent. You cannot change the figure without simultaneously changing the ground. There are three figure ground relationships I want us to focus on. The first is figure ground ambiguous. So a figure ground ambiguous relationship means that there's a push and pull that you might not be able to tell which is the figure and which is the ground. So it's going back and forth and back and forth. 50% of the surface is figure and 50% of this surface is ground. So 50-50%, it's a ratio. Figure ground is about ratios, proximity to the edge, and percentage of figure to ground. So the ratio of figure to ground, the proximity to the edges, and proportion. Proportion is really important in that space too. How big or large or small each one of the figures is. In a figure dominant composition, the figure is the focal point. That there is negative space on all sides of the figure. Negative space on all sides of the figure, figure dominant. For ground dominant, there might not be a figure and the entire ground is dominant. This is true for textures, and textures also need to fill the frame, meaning they need to touch every edge, every corner. Ground dominant. So figure ground relationships, the figure and ground are interdependent. You cannot change one without changing the other. So the key concepts that I want you to either reference, remember, or keep in mind as we move on to the assignment is the figure ground relationship, the composition. So composition is important. Design is about choice. So making a choice about how you're going to organize the figures. Let's not forget about asymmetrical balance. And there are presentations are tools that can be lectures. So there's several presentations within our unit, and you can use any of them to reference concepts of asymmetrical balance. And then always select a focal point. Avoid the center. The default of where anyone places anything is usually right in the center. And as creatives, and as you continue in creative exploration, you'll learn that all of this is about choice, choosing where to put things.